You've read the books, you've done the leadership programs, you know what you want to say in the room, but then the pressure hits. The stakes are high. You're the only woman at the table, or a senior executive challenges you, or someone talks over you again. And suddenly your brilliant prep dissolves. You freeze or ramble or shrink. You leave the meeting thinking, why didn't I say what I meant to say? And you carry that moment with you for hours, maybe even days. You're not alone, and more importantly, you are not broken. In today's episode, I want to teach you something most women leaders were never taught, but I want to see taught in schools. How to catch yourself in the moment, not just after the meeting is over, because executive presence isn't just what others see, it's how you lead yourself under pressure. We're going to talk about the real science behind the freeze and fumble moments, why this hits women in leadership harder than men, often at least, and how you can build a skill I call micro self-coaching, the ability to pause, reframe, and make a power move, even mid-meeting. So let's dive on in. I want to start with a story. A client of mine, a particularly brilliant technical director, was told she needed to lead more strategically. She took the feedback seriously. She prepped for every leadership meeting. She practiced her updates, her ideas, her data. But when she finally had the floor, a senior executive cut her off, and all that prep vanished. Her voice, her confidence, her clarity. She walked out not just frustrated at her lack of ability to navigate that situation, angry at being interrupted, angry with herself, but questioning if she even belonged at that level at all. Here's what I told her when she came to work with me. You don't need more prep. You need tools to lead your inner voice when the moment hits. I want you to hear that too. You do not need more prep. Prep is important. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big advocate of prep. But you need the tools to lead your inner voice when that moment hits. Because that's what we're talking about today. That is the stuff that's going to unstick you. So let's grab a coffee. Let's take a deep breath. Let's learn how to coach yourself under pressure. So you can lead not just with competence, but with calm, confident authority that means it doesn't all get under your skin. I remember years ago, I was in a room where I had the solution no one else was bringing up. But I hesitated. I was waiting for the right moment. Have you been there? I was second guessing myself. Do I bring this up? Do I wait? Will somebody else say it? Maybe it's a stupid idea. The more I waited, the more I thought, gosh, this is a stupid idea. If it's a good idea, somebody else would have said it. Then someone else brought it up minutes later and they got the credit. I went away from that meeting feeling like I'd failed, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I hadn't practiced how to say it when it counted. I hadn't learned how to overcome the self-doubt, the internal narrative. I didn't know how safe I was to speak up in that room. And that comes from years of being talked over, and I'm an interrupter myself. But I felt I couldn't stand my ground in that room. And you know what? That is a story that I could say has happened to me dozens of times, if not more. Possibly hundreds, I'm not quite sure. And I would say I hear it on a weekly basis from clients and women that come to work with me. Even high performers, even experienced leaders hit these moments. In fact, I see quite a lot of the time when somebody gets promoted, it sort of resets this feeling and you feel like you're struggling once again to learn how to speak up in that next level room. The difference I want to teach you today is how some of us can coach ourselves through it, and I want that for you. So first of all, I want to dig into the concept of the pressure spiral. This is a real pattern. It's a real thing that happens. You replay the conversation in your head. You ruminate about how others see you. Sometimes you're doing this in the moment, in the room, by the way. You then start performing in meetings rather than leading. Then you start thinking, this is about performance and it doesn't feel authentic. Then you start to hold back. You're protecting your image instead of sharing your insight. You know what you're doing at this point? You're reacting in the moment. You're carrying it into every meeting after you. You're carrying this negative self-talk, this performance pressure, this inability to think in the moment with you from meeting to meeting to meeting. What happens first thing in the day, it lasts with you until the last thing at night. Potentially, you even take it to bed and lose some good sleep over it. This is what is called the spiral. And it's what we need to interrupt. This negative thought spiral that starts and keeps you spiraling all day long, potentially all week long. Potentially you only recover at the weekend, or worse, vacation. That's the extreme end of this. Not knowing how to break that pattern. And this starts by challenging this spiral head on. So if you've ever blanked in a meeting, second guessed yourself for days afterwards, it's not because you're not qualified. It's because your nervous system has kicked in. In that moment of the blanking, of the self-blame, of the self-protection, your body's doing its job. It's keeping you safe, but it's using an outdated operating system. Here's what's actually going on. When you have these thoughts and feelings, your adrenaline and your cortisol spike. We're all familiar with those. The adrenaline makes you run fast, makes you think faster. It's actually very good for you in that sense, right? We produce adrenaline when we're running. We produce adrenaline to wake up in the morning. We produce cortisol to wake up in the morning as well. Cortisol is a necessary hormone. We shouldn't all demonize it the way society does. The problem is when it's spiking out of control. When you get these adrenaline cortisol spikes in the workplace, your brain shifts from the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning piece of your brain, the bit that's logical and reasonable, to the amygdala, which is your threat response center. Your brain goes in to that flight or fright response. Like, do I run or do I fight? It is no longer reasonable. It is no longer logical. It's going, get me out of this situation. What happens then? You freeze, you fumble, you ramble, you retreat. You're not leading from strategic thinking. You're reacting from survival. And your voice disappears. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a tiger and an executive questioning your decision. It sees a risk. So it prioritizes safety over clarity. And this matters even more for us as women in a male-dominated industry, because you're in this double-bind situation. We're told, be assertive, but not too assertive, because that might be aggressive. We are told that we're the only woman in the room, so we're speaking for our gender, not just ourselves. That puts a huge burden on us, which means our amygdala is more likely to kick in. We're aware that our past experiences of being interrupted, ignored, dismissed, are priming our nervous system for, this is a threat response, there's a tiger out there, let's run. If you've ever been burnt before, your brain learns speaking up isn't safe. And that's why the pressure feels heavy. And as women, we're more likely to have been told that, which is why there is this more intense experience for us as women on average. I hope you're one of the ones that's not in that norm, but the sad state of affairs is, as a woman, actually, even if you're not in a male-dominated group, as a woman, you're more likely to have been burned. You're more likely to be told something negative about the way you're speaking than your male peers. So you are primed. Your body is primed for, this is not safe. So when something does happen, we are looking for, this is unsafe. And the number of times where I have to have conversations with clients, which is, I can see 10 other ways that particular comment was meant to be taken, but we're so primed for the threat response. We see the threat everywhere. So it's not just that we are genuinely more threatened than men, we also see threats more than men. And rightly so. I'm not saying that we shouldn't listen to that, but it means that our thoughts are following us around. We have this internal spiral. We think about it afterwards. Why did I freeze? I should have said something. They probably think I'm not ready. Next time I'll stay quiet unless I'm 100% sure. I always mess up in those moments. The moment that this becomes a story about who you are, instead of it just happened, we're in trouble. Because that's when you're going to stop showing up. It's going to drive your inner critic, your imposter voice, your perfectionist tendencies, the be seen, not heard. Each one means that you're saying, don't trust yourself. Your inner critic says, well, that was embarrassing. You sounded unsure. Your imposter says, they're going to realize you're not qualified. You shouldn't really be here. And your perfectionist says, you should have had the perfect response ready. You didn't go into that room well enough prepared. How dare you? Each of these voices adds fuel to the spiral, the negativity spiral. It stills your presence in the next moment. And for every moment after that, If you've ever gone from one meeting and then the next meeting you find you're still ruminating, you are not just doing a disservice to the people in that room, you're doing a disservice to yourself. You're taking everything with you. Now, I'm not saying you can magically eliminate pressure, but what we can do is interrupt this thought spiral. And that's what I want to achieve today for you. This is self-coaching, a 101. This is one of the first things I teach people. And it's about micro self-coaching in that moment to, first of all, learn how to not take it with you. But then secondly, learn how to overcome that amygdala going, tiger, speaking up anyway, and retraining your brain that actually you are safe because of how you do say things. I want to teach you how to coach, not criticize. First of all, let's talk about what self-coaching is. Self-coaching is a huge phrase, and I do teach big courses on self-coaching, but this particular form of micro self-coaching is not about journaling for 30 minutes or meditating, which you don't have time for in the middle of the working day. I'm not even sure you have time for it full stop. Some of us don't. It is about regaining clarity in 30 seconds or less. It's taking yourself in that moment of spiral and saying, wait, hold on, I need to reframe here. It's highlighting that this is external to you. It isn't who you are. And that starts with an inner leadership response. You don't need to fix this situation, but you do need to shift the way you respond to the situation. The one thing you can control is your thoughts. You can't control your feelings. They are just there. Your feelings, though, are dictated by your thoughts. You can't control how you act. Believe it or not, you can't. How you act is a direct relation to your feelings. I've just told you don't control your feelings. Somebody says to me, stop worrying. I'm not going to stop worrying. I will carry on worrying. And my worry will dictate what actions I take. Like, it's really hard to not do something when you have an emotion. Really, really, really hard. So you've got to recognize your actions are dictated by your feelings, but your feelings are dictated by your thoughts, and that you can control. So I want you to understand what happens to coach yourself in the moment. Here's the truth that no one teaches you. Executive presence isn't just about how you sound in the room. It's how you're holding yourself internally. When your thoughts are spinning, your nervous system is in panic mode. You're trying to prove you belong. No phrase, no script, no perfect body language is going to land with power in that moment. Presence starts with inner leadership, and that's where self-coaching comes in. And here's the most important part that we miss, particularly as women. When something goes sideways, our instinct is to self-criticize. I should have said something. I blew it. They probably think I'm not ready. And down the spiral we go. But self-coaching isn't about criticism. Criticism shames us. Coaching gives you choices. It sounds more like, what did I need in that moment that I didn't give myself? What actually matters right now? How can I lead the next 5 minutes instead of reliving the last 5? When you can't change the room, you can still change how you show up in it. You don't have to fix the situation. You don't need the perfect comeback. You just need to interrupt the spiral, to pause, reframe, and make one intentional move forward. That's what micro self-coaching is. It's emotional regulation plus intentional action. It's the bridge from fight or flight to calm, composed leadership. And if you're thinking, okay, but how do I actually do that in the moment? That's what I'm talking about in the next section. I'm going to give you 3 real-time coaching tools that I use every day myself, and I get all my clients to use, that you can start using right away, even in your next meeting. So I want you getting out your pen, your paper, taking verbal notes. I don't mind, but I want you capturing these because I want you to start using them today. Here we go. When your mind's racing, your heart's rate goes up. The words aren't coming out. You need something simple, something grounding, something you can do while still technically looking like you're listening in that Zoom meeting. But first of all, give yourself permission to not be listening. The reality is, if you're spiraling, you're probably only half listening anyway. And one of the objections I get to what I'm about to tell you as my 3 tools is, but I should be listening. And I'm like, yeah, but are you really listening? How many times have you thought, I don't know what just happened? Crap, because you're internally analyzing and beating yourself up. So give yourself permission to zone out for 10 seconds. That's it. Zone out for 10 seconds. Give yourself permission because you aren't really listening anyway. That's the first important tool. The next thing is these tools are short, they're repeatable, and when practiced, And by practice, I mean, you've got to do it every meeting for 3 weeks. Let's see how we get on here. They will become second nature. In a month's time, you won't even be thinking about this. You'll just be doing it. And as you're doing it, not only does it become second nature to use these tools, but because you're doing them, you're retraining your brain to realize there's less to be threatened by in the first place. Remember, we've got the double-edged sword here. We're more likely to be threatened, and we're more likely to see threats because of our exposure to threatening situations. And actually, there's a third piece to that, which is because of our behavior. I hate this one. It feels like victim blaming, but because of our behavior, we're more likely to be picked on, right? So if we can calm ourselves down enough, we're not just going to reduce our threat response in the moment, which means we have better things to say. We are also retraining our brains, and we're showing up in such a way that we're less likely to then be picked on as well. It's if we don't do this, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't kind of feeling, right? So this is not victim blaming. This is kind of, let's do something about the situation you're in, my love. Okay. Tool number 1, the power pause. You're going to do a pattern interrupt here. When your body goes into that fight or flight response, the urge is to react fast, to speak, defend, perform, or shut down. But leadership often starts with a pause. So give yourself one. 3 deep, conscious breaths. Even in an actual physical room, you can still just focus on your breath 3 times. We're talking 15 seconds here. Silently ask what actually matters in this moment. Is it sounding perfect or holding my ground? Is it being light or am I being clear? This tool recenters you in seconds because clarity lives in the pause. Also, when you're focusing on the breathing first, your adrenaline and cortisol is going down because you're no longer focusing on the thing that's caused it. While you're focusing on what caused you to release the adrenaline and cortisol, how you're feeling, how you're thinking, how are you reacting, how you're feeling attacked, you will keep releasing those hormones. When you focus on your breathing, you're distracting yourself to bring that adrenaline and cortisol down. And then you can ask the questions, what really matters in this moment? Do I sound perfect or am I holding my ground? Am I focused on being light or am I being clear? As I said, recenter yourself. Tool number 2, the reframing pivot. The real problem in high pressure situations and moments isn't the situation. It's that voice in your head narrating it. The voice that says, don't you dare mess up. They're going to think you're stupid. You're not ready for this room. That voice, that's fear. The pivot I want you to make after you've done the pause, the reframe pivot, is to catch that thought and ask, what would the calm version of me say here? A lot of my clients say, what would Toni say here? They think Toni's on their shoulder. What would Toni say here? So if you've listened to my podcast for long enough, ask yourself, what would Toni say to me in this moment? How would she reframe it? Or what does the leader in me need to hear right now? Remember, you're not fighting the fear. You're choosing not to follow it. You can choose your thoughts. You can't choose your feelings, but you can choose your thoughts. Then the third tool is anchoring this in. So the first tool is pause, get yourself under control. The second tool is the reframe. The third tool is prescriptive phrases that help reset you mid-conversation. So when you freeze or lose your train of thought, you've got a few practice phrases ready to help you stay composed, even when your mind's scrambling. I'm a huge advocate with my clients of getting them to write their own phrases. Like I'll come up with a few, and I'm going to give you a few in a minute, but come up with some that really resonate with them. If they work from home, I get them to stick them on sticky notes around their computer camera screen area, right? So they've got them ready to hand. But if they work in their office, obviously you can't really do that in the same way. Well, you can, but people might think you're a bit weird, but hey, zero judgment on my part. But also, I think for all of us, it's really, really useful to practice them out loud. So they just roll off your tongue. So just walk around your house, talk to the cat, talk to the partner, talk to the dog. I don't care. The kids, the toddlers. Just practice saying these phrases out loud so you don't feel too weird. So here are a few to try. Let me pause and reframe that. I want to make sure I'm being clear. Let me take a step back. Here's what I want to make sure we don't lose in this conversation. These are phrases you're going to use to anchor in that moment. Buy yourself time, signal your authority at the same time. When you practice these, they're going to come natural. And as I said, if you do this for 2 weeks, 2 weeks is pretty typical. Some people it takes a month, but if you did this for 2 weeks in every single meeting, the pausing, the reframing, and the anchoring to give yourself that moment, you will be different. You will be different. The final thing is emotionally anchoring yourself. So this is kind of a bonus. And this is where I talk about hold, don't carry. I did a whole episode on hold, don't carry. I will link it in the show notes with my dear friend, Lindsay White. She's also a coach. And we had this amazing conversation about the coaching concept of hold, don't carry. And this is something I think every leader, actually every human should do. It's a philosophy more than a phrase or something you're going to do. It's a philosophy. You hold while you're present in the room. You hold your emotions. You hold the room's emotions. You hold space for the dickhead, excuse my language. You hold space for the discomfort. You hold space for the horrible situation. You hold space for the pain of the person in front of you. You hold space. As a coach, I will hold space for tears. I will hold space for uncomfortable conversations. I'll hold space for a client who's just been let go. I'll hold space for somebody who's just had a really bad day, but I don't carry it. To carry means it shapes you for the rest of the day. It shapes how you see yourself. It shapes how you show up to other conversations. It shapes what you're thinking about long after it's over. You can hold a moment of discomfort. You can hold tension. You can hold disagreement. You can hold somebody else's frustration at you. But that doesn't mean you have to carry it with you for hours or days or into your next big opportunity. So let's break it down. What do I mean by this? Holding sounds like, that threw me. I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to stay grounded. This isn't how I want it to go, but I'm here. I'm still leading this room. What carrying sounds like, and we definitely want to be avoiding. Why did I say that earlier? I sounded incompetent. I'm just going to stay quiet next time so I don't mess it up. When you can't let it go in the moment, here's the tool. Park it. You can park things and not carry them to the meeting because you have promised yourself you're going to return to it intentionally later. I will do this. I've over 8 years of executive coaching full-time. I have heard some devastating stories. Every now and then, something horrendous happens. A client loses a loved one. There's diagnosis of cancer. Sorry if any of this is triggering for you, but I've heard them. Not to mention the people being let go. There are tears. There is pain. I do my best to process in that moment so I can really solve that client really, really well. Sometimes it hits a nerve and I need to go, you know what, I've got another client call in 5 minutes. I have to park this. The next client of mine deserves me to park this. And I make an intentional promise to myself that I will revisit it later. And I'll journal through it later most often. But I have made a promise. I will write it on a literal to-do list. Process X conversation. I have promised myself that allows me to let it go for the next meeting I'm going into. I wish I'd done this more as an executive. I didn't learn this until I became a coach, which is why I'm telling you. Because if I'd learned how to do this as an executive, I swear I would have been a much better executive than I was. So I want you to give yourself permission, if you cannot let it go in the moment, to park it. Say to yourself, I'm not ignoring this. I'm setting it down so I can finish this meeting. I'll come back when I have the space to lead through it, not spiral in it. That's not avoidance. That's emotional self-leadership. And that is hold, don't carry. It might just be the single most powerful self-coaching tool of all. And I am sad I only figured it out when I became a coach, because it is something that every single one of us should have in our leadership toolkit. So now you've got those tools, let's bring it all together. You have the tools to coach yourself in the moment, to interrupt that spiral, ground your presence, and respond instead of reacting. But what about when you're actually in those high stakes moments? When you're interrupted mid-sentence, when someone dismisses your idea in a meeting, when you get asked a question you don't know the answer to? That's where communication under pressure really gets tested. And that's why you need both parts of the toolkit. The external leadership, the ability to coach yourself back to clarity, and then that external language, the scripts, the phrases, the reframes that let you speak with authority on when the stakes are high. Here's the truth I want you to remember. Preparation and presence is power. Presence without preparation can leave you grasping. Preparation without presence can come off robotic. And preparation without presence also means you just collapse in a heap sometimes. When you have both, that's where your voice becomes unstoppable. And that's why I want to wrap up this episode by telling you about a gift I've got for you. I've got a free guide called Say It Like a Leader. And it's scripts, phrases, reframes for real world moments like interruptions, disagreements, visibility in the senior executive team, confidence cues to help you hold your ground without sounding aggressive, and power language bonuses. The swapping out of this phrase for this phrase that means you don't stop softening yourself unintentionally. When you pair that with what you've learned today with self-coaching, you are going to have it all. You're going to coach yourself on the inside and speak with strategy externally, because the goal here isn't to have the perfect response. It's to know that when the pressure shows up, you're still leading. You're still being the kick-ass woman I know that you're capable of being. So in summary, you've now learned a set of tools that most leaders never get taught. As I said, I wish this was taught in school. You're able to communicate under pressure because you're leading yourself in those moments that matter most. Because the truth is, leadership isn't about what you say out loud. It's about what you say to yourself before you open your mouth. And if what you're saying to yourself is negative self-talk, what comes out your mouth is not going to be helpful. So I hope today's podcast episode has taken that shift for you, shifting that voice from critical to intentional. If you're ready to go deeper, go ahead to the show notes and download that Say It Like a Leader toolkit, those practical phrases to stop you getting interrupted, deal with being challenged, asking for something that you don't know the answer to. It's confidence building reframes. It's simple reflections to help you stop shrinking your voice. Go grab it right now, head to the show notes or click on tonicollis.com/say it like a leader and start that alongside the micro self-coaching that we've done today. So let's just do a final recap. When you show up with pressure, own the room, right? Give yourself space to pause and slow down. Give yourself space to reframe. And that's where some intentional phrases can really help. And then anchor yourself with some really intentional phrases before finally learning to hold, not carry. When pressure shows up, your goal isn't to be perfect. It's to pause, reframe, and move with intention. Self-coaching in the moment isn't about fixing yourself. It's about guiding yourself. And leadership presence, well, that starts inside. So the next time you're in a high-stakes room and that pressure rises, hold the moment. Don't carry the weight with you. Your voice is ready. Now it's time to trust it.